So yeah, first of all, when talking about water quality, it's always worthwhile thinking about what are our water quality issues. I will sort of integrate this with communities because, you know, that's what we hear quite a lot from community groups. Water quality is a really massive issue, and we also hear around flooding as well. And I think really the strength around SuDS, integrated water management, is that multiple benefits approach, and that's what we need to understand and really develop that understanding. For those of you in London, you might have seen this sort of stuff before from me, so apologies for that. Really, I suppose water quality issues in London, these are 3 photos which highlight that. CSO is on the top left as you look at it, misconnections on the right, and road runoff, which is actually a South East Rivers Trust photo, on the bottom left-hand side. So I'll quickly gloss over that and start talking about the solutions and some of the projects which we've been involved in. So this project, which some of you may be aware of, is First Farm Wetlands. It's sort of a downstream solution, constructed wetland, which was developed by Enfield Council with support from us and actually from a large number of other organisations. And that's where particularly the funding came from for this. You know, the funding for this, there was a bit from FDGIA, from those of you in lead local flood authorities, but you probably know that that doesn't get you everywhere. And in actual fact, you know, particularly you see the amenity spaces around this site, you know, the cycle paths, the educational spaces, which were all integrated into that. They came from a variety of other sources. Very little of it was from water quality, but you know, a lot came from the GLA, whether it was through their green infrastructure funding or whether it came from, in actual fact, you know, the cycle paths and the cycle network. And they all put together so that in total this project cost just over 1.2 million. And you know, a proportion of that, about 600,000, was from flood risk. The rest came from other sources, and that's where the multiple benefits is really important. The community group around this one is actually phenomenal. The Friends of First Farm, when it was in development and being thought of, and bear in mind that this was just amenity grassland beforehand, the whole river, well, we didn't even know it was a river. I went there when I was in the Environment Agency, and the LLFA officer, Ian Russell at Enfield Council, said to me, there's a watercourse under here. And I went, is there? Well, I think I should know about that. I didn't. It wasn't on our maps. But yeah, we broke it open, or Enfield broke it open. But all of the meetings which we had for discussing that project were actually around someone's house at the end of the park, and they input quite heavily into that development and how it should be, you know, in actual fact the park should be developed. With that, they've taken it and they've run with it. They're actually looking to build their own cafe now. They undertake weekly events on site. They get corporates involved, they do the management activities, they are the eyes and the ears, and yet they're now fundraising for a community and dimension centre to be built on site. So that sort of community element has, you know, helped evolve the project. It's helped win the funding which has paid for the project, and it's looking at it's that post-project maintenance as well and management, and what they tell us is it's really actually changed the dynamics of the local community from where people don't interact to where in actual fact, you know, you've got a large group who come around and speak to each other every day, and that sort of links really into that health and well-being benefits. Second project on this is Broomfield Park. This was actually only delivered about September last year, and that's a project which was actually funded by Coca-Cola, again delivered by Enfield Council, who did put in a little bit of money as well, along with the GLA. When we were originally thinking about applying for this project to Coca-Cola and the Rivers Trusts, we met up with the Friends of group. It's a very well-used park, very much loved. They've got a very strong Friends of group, and we walked around with them, and they said, "Oh, we thought about putting a pond here." And we're like, "Oh well, that's where we might put this wetland. Would you be up for it?" They said yeah, and they supported the application. We did some community meetings with them and got about 30, 40 people around and asked them a series of questions, and that all involved inputted to the results. with that, it was actually critical because we really struggled to get this through planning permission, particularly because it's a heritage listed parks and gardens site and there were some objections. It actually got refused at the first planning application, and it's really because of a bit of lobbying from the Friends actually helped get that through the planning committee within the council. So it's really important that that happened. In terms of water quality benefits of some of these sites, this is First Farm, sort of some of the upstream, downstream results. You can sort of see if you're interested in ecology, such as me, you can see that sort of some of these readings, particularly say ammonia's, going from what would be bad in terms of WFD to good. That's some quite significant boundary jumps. When we scale that up, that can really start to, look at that WFD scale improvement and draw down that alternative funding from the Environment Agency to help you deliver your sites from the non-FDGIA funding. So that's your match funding, which can be critical. Similar one from Pimms Park, some really good improvements, water quality improvements there. And these have really been lobbied for by local people. This First Farm is actually a site which has had a long history of pollution incidents, and the Friends of Pimms Park there have been a good champion for getting some stuff delivered around that site. So we've done some of these sites and we've built some of them and they've worked really well. So what we did independently with a bit of funding from a few little bits and pieces scraped together, and with the help of Oxford University, we developed a water quality model, which we actually started to work with community groups. They then, with our help, went out and identified all number of different sites around the catchment, and you can see these. You can see the completed ones in green, and some. In actual fact, one of them, this one down here, is Broomfield Park, and that's already been completed now, so it's a bit of an old slide, out of date. But so these sites were all identified by the local community. And then championed. The results of them highlighted that we can actually improve the in-channel water quality to good status. Now, what the Friends did was they went to a local developer, which, if I just go back, was Meridian Water, which is just down here, where about 10,000 homes are being developed. And they went to that developer and they said, hey, look, it's great that you're restoring your river through the development, but we actually want that river to be healthy. We want that river to, have fish, have invertebrates, have wildlife in it. And with that, the developer went, yeah, that seems like a pretty good idea. Why don't we give you some? Why don't we put some money towards it? And so there is the potential. Well, they've outlined about £200,000 to put towards the development and the implementation of these wetlands around the catchment, so that that good water quality can be delivered there. So hopefully another additional source of match funding, which we might have sort of instigated, but in actual fact, those community groups, those Friends of groups, have taken and they've done so much more than we would ever do with it. And I think that's the power of, we've all been trained in our various subjects, and invariably I think, the partnerships between, ecologists, even though I say I'm an ex-ecologist, you as engineers or landscape gardeners or planners becomes critical, because we all think differently and community groups think differently. And I think that's a really interesting dynamic. It can be challenging, obviously, but the rewards from it can be really significant. So the next project I want to talk to you about is road runoff. These are the funders and the partners of the project. This is the phase 1 work. So road runoff is a problem all around London. This is actually the WFD water bodies within London. The red highlights that they're all failing pretty much because of road runoff. Not surprising given the traffic. The pollution comes from a whole range of different sources in road runoff, and in actual fact they're from different bits of the body of the car and the movement of the car. Where we have done this, so we've actually used a transport or traffic models from London to look at what roads are actually causing what risk and damage or potential damage to our rivers in London. Where we've done that is in the separate sewer system area, because it isn't really relevant in the combined sewer system area, because obviously if they're in combined sewers, I think if that pollutants makes its way into the river, the least of the issues is the road runoff there. It's in actual fact all the sewage which will be going into the rivers. So we've only looked at the outer London areas, and those are the areas outlined in green. In total within this, we've actually looked at 400,000 kilometres of roads throughout London. I'm hoping this will come up. So this work has been done in partnership with the GLA Transport for London and the Environment Agency. And the GLA now host a website which is an interactive website. Although I like technology, I'm evidently not great with it. So this has changed the way we actually look at water quality. Generally, as river people, we would look at your water quality in the channel and try to use that to define where we should do solutions. Road runoff, because that issue only actually occurs during spate instance, what we call that first flush, that, you know, where it's been dry for 2 weeks and then flushes into the rivers with, you know, big storm surge or with the next rainfall event. And in actual fact, from a environmental monitoring perspective, that's difficult / nigh on impossible to actually pick up unless you spend thousands and thousands of pounds on monitoring. So it's not worth it. So the system which we've developed, or we've been involved in developing in partnership with Middlesex University, who actually provide all the knowledge, and we've done sort of the mapping and integration, is is changing the way we look at it. So we've used these models, and this is the outputs of it. The links are included in the presentation, so you can actually go to them. And you can click on any road. So all of the roads we actually investigated failed for at least one pollutant, with many of them failing for multiple pollutants. So you can see here, this is one of the top 5% most polluting roads. I think it's the part of the North Circular. And in actual fact, you've got some incredibly high loads of pollution. So I'm going to try and go back to the presentation now. So sorry about that. Make you earn your money, Paul. So really, why does this matter? Why is this useful? I mean, it's useful from our side of things as an environmentalist, but how could it be useful for your side of things?
Right, need to go back.
It's probably the last time I include a link in a presentation.
Yeah, I just don't think we do it as straightforward as we could have done. There we go. Okay.
Okay. So how is this helping? And this is a quote which Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, has provided around this project. I won't read it out. I'll let you read that. It's been a while since I've read it. But in actual fact, you know, thinking about these things a bit differently can actually help support you and your sort of enabling to deliver that sort of these interventions elsewhere. So as I'm understanding things, and I'm not putting any other words in anyone's mouth with this, is that this project is starting to look at how Transport for London and others are potentially looking at funding SuDS and integrated water management in future. So they're looking at it from their own programmes, and they're also looking at it from programmes where they award money to. So that's, you know, particularly local authorities. And so, you know, in future, at the moment, you can apply for a whole variety of funding to those programmes to, you know, deliver cycleways, to deliver everything else. And a lot of that is now involving green infrastructure, whether that's from an air quality point of view or, you know, from a flooding point of view, or in actual fact, just a Healthy Streets initiative, our health and our well-being. And part of that mechanism in future may well include, you know, awarding projects or giving the projects higher score, which actually treats some of this pollution issues, because it is, you know, it is government legislation, and it, you know, really it's about the future well-being, health of our environment for London, and in actual probably that is for the whole of the UK as well, because it is national and international legislation just about still. So this is looking at that pollution loading. We are taking this forward, and we're actually looking at it from another stage now, where we're looking at treatment systems. I can't really say too much on that because the funders of the project, which are, you know, similar funders with ZSL brought on board to the last one don't want me to say it because they want to go to press on it soon or at some stage, so please don't publish any of this. But yes, we're looking at a decision support system to guide what sort of SuDS should be delivered to treat the pollution loading on those rivers, on those roads. And we're also looking across London at the potential locations for constructed wetlands all around London. And we believe that, you know, there are over 1,000 potential locations where these sort of wetlands could be delivered. Not all of them will be viable, but there is that sort of distributed system, distributed network, where we can actually begin to break open some of our catchments to see that water again. And particularly with London largely being a clay bowl, minus a bit of the south west of London, you know, that's largely what we're missing. And that's what's actually causing a lot of our flood risk, a lot of our, you know, water quality issues. So that's what we need to overcome. So I'll leave it there, if that's all right. Are there any questions?
My name is Alan Lakewood from the Community Association. I am a civil engineer. Sorry. A retired civil engineer. Chemical engineers talk about material balances. The pollution which has been removed from the water hasn't disappeared. It's gone into another media from the water. So probably that media, the grasses and the various other green growth that's in the ponds. In your costing for this project, have you allowed for the future treatment and removal of the contaminated grasses and other medias?
Well, that I suppose that depends, and bear in mind I'm not a chemist, ex-ecologist at best. You know, that depends on which pollutants you're talking about, because the organic pollutants will break down and go to inert substances. The inorganic pollutants will obviously remain. And, you know, that is an issue. It is what, you know, particularly some local authorities are quite concerned about. Others are not so concerned about. And I think in future, how many people were from water companies here? You may not like me for saying this, but in future, a lot of the maintenance of SuDS may well go over to water companies, as I understand through the Sewers for Adoption practice. Is that right, Paul?
Design construction guidance, April 2020 this year.
Yeah. So in actual fact, that sort of liability may not be going on to local authorities. It may be going on to water companies. Which will make me a very unpopular person to say, that I imagine, in some quarters. But it is a factor, it does need to be considered, but yeah. The other thing about this latest road runoff project is we've done quite a lot of work. It's been quite tough. It's, you know, in total these two projects together is about £90,000. However, a lot of what we've done is very easily transferred to other locations. You just need your traffic data and your road width, which are the two most difficult issues. And from there, you can really, you know, go and do this yourself. How we've done the phase one stuff is all available on our website. Although, if you would like to do it in your local authority area, I would recommend don't do it yourself. Drop us a line and we can see how we can help you, because there's probably a lot of time saved there, because we've got that sort of methodology in a spreadsheet. So yeah.
Can you say where you're from?
Judith Beard from the Environment Agency. I was looking at your water quality data before. Sorry if I missed one of the graphs, I couldn't really see it from the back here. Have you looked at all at any suspended solids or fine sediments, and whether those have been taken out and how successful the SuDS have been in removing those before the water's entered any watercourses?
Yeah, we have looked at social suspended sediments, but obviously they don't have that WFD criteria, although are a great proxy for you know, the pollutants, and we have looked at that in quite a lot of detail. In actual fact, one of the pollutants, inverted commas, within the road runoff project is total suspended sediments, because that is a great proxy for the over 300 contaminants contained within road runoff. And really, it's about that retention. When we're talking about treatment systems, one of the large factors in that decision support tool is likely to be a clogging factor related to how those pollutants, will move or won't move through a SuDS system, and that's how effective that SuDS system will be.